Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's live stream news update, news summary from Moscow, with all the latest on major developments. It is, of course, 1st of July, by the way, 3 p.m. Moscow time, middle of the day, and finally we have some good weather. And probably this good weather will continue at least, hopefully, at least for a week or two, because the previous month was rainy, man, cloudy and rainy big time. But anyways, let's go through some news, dear friends. A lot to discuss. It's gonna be big update, and I'm gonna start with the good news, which is that Russian armed forces liberated Ukrainska settlement in the Kharkov region and Kopani settlement in Zaporozhye region. Let me show you on the map location of this settlement. So this one is Kopani here, and dear friends, literally yesterday, I reported about progress of the Russian armed forces and liberation of Rovne settlement and Lisnoye settlement, also this area, also in Zaporozhye region on the eastern flank of Zaporozhye region, and it looks like Kiev regime's defense lines are kind of collapsing in this area, and no amount of drones that NATO member states are giving to them are helping much to stop Russian advances. So good news. Also, when it comes to this another settlement that was liberated, Ukrainska, well, this is the Ukrainska settlement, this prolonged one, right? And also progress, this is Volchansk direction, by the way, in the Kharkov region. So progress of the Russian armed forces continues on daily basis. Unfortunately, as of now, we did not yet receive update from Defense Ministry about complete liberation of Konstantinovka city and Liman city, but soon we're gonna have this major update for sure from Russian Defense Ministry. Clearing operation is being finalized, and of course, Russian militaries will take whatever time they need to finalize clearing operation with as minimal casualties as possible, hopefully with no casualties at all. Also, dear friends, Russian armed forces, of course, conducting long-range attacks on military logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime and energy infrastructure that is related to military activity of these terrorists. And we have updates that Russian Gerain drones, for example, targeted industrial facility in Zaporozhye city itself. And what is also, I think, worth noticing that lately there is a lot of videos that Russian Defense Ministry is sharing with the public and other sources also, when these Gerain drones are deployed with the updated version, let me say, of Gerain drones are deployed that are basically guided drones, right? It's not like launch and forget. No, operator is actually watching through camera what's going on around there, and its precision is increased, of course, therefore. And also this deployment of drones with their satellite navigation clearly indicates that Russian militaries already are adopting new modernized communication means, and I think as soon as special military operation will over, maybe even before that, we will see large-scale deployment all over the Russia and possibly neighboring countries, Russian systems of Russian alternative to the Starlink. I'm quite sure about it, that this significant increase in the deployment of these drones, Gerain drones on telemetry, right, indicates that Russian military is actively using satellite internet, satellite navigation. But it was not just Zaporozhye direction that was struck by Russian militaries with the long-range attacks, long-range precision attacks. Also, reports are that explosions were heard in Sumy region, Dnipropetrovsk region, Kharkov region, Chernigov region overnight. So Russian militaries continue to eliminate military and logistical lines of the Kiev regime and the energy infrastructure also. Kiev regime and its NATO backers started this logistical and energy war, right? Russia will finish it. And on this topic, dear friends, we have reports that in the Dnipropetrovsk region alone, at least 5 gas stations were neutralized, destroyed, and also mobile trucks that were used by Kiev regime's forces to fuel their equipment. So there is a total control of skies by Russian militaries over the entirety of the left bank of the Dnieper River. And these areas, we might argue quite effectively, are completely, almost completely cut off from right bank of the Dnieper River. And of course, that will have a significant impact on the military capabilities of Kiev regime's forces. You might enter nowadays Zaporozhye city from Kiev controlled territory, Zaporozhye city on a car, on a truck, as Kiev regime often does to launch these drones, right? They use these 40-foot trucks packed with the drones. So they might enter Zaporozhye region, cross the Dnieper River on the bridges that still stand. Russian militaries did not yet receive the green light to take down those bridges too, but they will struggle. Kiev regime's forces will struggle to move around the Zaporozhye region as soon as they run out of fuel and to get back. And also, there is a high probability that Russian drones that are constantly 24/7 monitoring the situation gonna locate them and eliminate. Same goes for a significant portion of Dnipropetrovsk region also, obviously. So interesting developments there. Probably NATO strategics and their Ukrainian proxies are now жалеют, how you say that in English, are understand that they made mistake initiating this logistical and energy war, because they never had no chances, by the way. Yes, they are creating some minor inconveniences. In some cases, maybe a bit more than a minor inconveniences for Russian civilians, but there is no way they're gonna manage to dealt such damage on Russia with these long-range attacks that it will have an impact on the developments on the battlefield. Just not happening, not possible, right? And to continue, dear friends, literally about an hour ago, media outlets began reporting about another Russian long-range attacks in Nikolaev and Odessa regions. In Odessa region, for example, reports are that Iskander-M missiles were deployed, and you can see some aftermath of this strike, thick smoke from the area. So either military depot was destroyed or warehouse with some military equipment. No details as of now what exactly was struck, but something important, I guess. Otherwise, Russian militaries would not use Iskander, and it was clearly on target, right? Missile was clearly on target, giving this level of smoke that is coming from the area. Also, I think worth paying little attention to recent escalation, to escalation that Kiev regime initiated recently with Belarus. You know, dear friends, Zelensky, head of this Western-backed terrorist regime, under the orders, I guess, of his British masters, started threatening Belarus. He came up with the ultimatum that if Belarus will not stop cooperating with Russia, if Belarus will not dismantle all the retranslators on the border with Ukraine, then this will be done by Kiev regime's forces. It was a pure open threat towards Belarus, right? And 3-4 days after ultimatum, Zelensky said that, well, Minsk dismantled all their retranslators, so this ultimatum worked, and Zelensky bragged about it. Well, Sirski, head of Kiev regime's general staff, has different opinion. Looks like maybe Sirski and Zelensky need to like communicate a little better which line of propaganda they are pushing to have a better understanding on that. And so Sirski says that no, this is not the case. Minsk did not dismantle no retranslators, and yesterday those retranslators were actually working. So what's going on there? I mean, it is anybody's guess. Maybe miscommunication between Zelensky and Sirski in terms of what line of propaganda going to be pushed, or maybe after Zelensky said that, well, Minsk removed red translators, so it's all good now. Maybe London, British masters of Zelensky tell him that, you what we are talking about. We are telling you have to escalate with Belarus, so carry on with the escalation. And maybe that's why Sirski now is saying that, well, no, red translators are still there, and he continues to push this narrative that if Minsk will not listen to Kiev's demands, Kiev's ultimatums, then Kiev regime's forces will take some action. And yet again, dear friends, if a decision was already made in London, and London is, of course, a capital of globalists, let's say, right? A British ruling class is a major force among globalist club. And if decision is already being made there, that they're going to attack Belarus also to eliminate energy infrastructure of Belarus or industrial capabilities of Belarus, then of course they will push their puppets in Ukraine to prepare the ground for these attacks, right? And probably Sirski is saying, contradicting his boss, Zelensky, exactly because of this intent of the globalists. And if that's the case, then it's only a matter of time before we will see escalation, military escalation between formally Ukraine and Belarus, in reality, of course, between NATO member states, their Ukrainian proxies, and Belarus. And as an indicator that that's exactly what is going to happen, we have this update that residents of Chernihiv region are being forced to leave their homes to accommodate Turkey regime's forces. Dear friends, I reported about a week ago that Kiev regime implemented mandatory evacuation from northern parts of Chernihiv region, especially areas that are bordering with Russian Bryansk region. But now reports are coming in that Kiev regime is forcing locals out of northwestern parts of Chernihiv region also that are bordering with Belarus, with the Gomel region, right? For example, and if these reports are correct, and if Kiev regime is actually deploying whatever reserves it has towards these northern directions of Chernihiv region, this definitely might be their indicator that some massive military provocation going to take place against Belarus. It's a probability, right? And they are removing civilians because they don't, first and foremost, they want to use their property for military purposes, and secondly, they don't want their activities to be known by anybody. And everyone understands, by the way, majority of people in Chernihiv region or Sumy region or Kharkov region, they are Russians, by the way, right? They don't want to evacuate because they are hoping that Russian troops will liberate them from this terrorist Nazi regime in Kiev as soon as possible. So that's another reason why people being forced out. When it comes to this potential escalation between Kiev regime, NATO, and Belarus, well, Moscow has pledged once again decisive response in the event of a Ukrainian attack on Belarus. Russia and Belarus will jointly respond decisively to any military aggression by the Kiev regime's forces, stated their Federal Council Deputy Chairman Konstantin Kasachov. Without a doubt, we are union state, we are military allies, and anyone who talks about a prospect of any kind of armed operation against Belarus must clearly understand that they will face consolidated response from our two allied states. The senator stated, according to TASS News agency, and I think this is important. I think this is important. We should keep in mind that President of Belarus a few days ago was here in Russia, had a two-day meeting, negotiations with the Russian president in Valdai, and after that he went to China and had a meeting. I mean Lukashenko, president of Belarus, he went to China, had a meeting with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and one of the topics of discussion obviously was these threats that Belarus is facing now from Kiev regime and its NATO backers. And the Belarusian Foreign Ministry made a statement exactly on the day when Lukashenko was meeting with Xi Jinping that if Belarus is attacked, Belarusian militaries will use all means in their disposal to defend the republic. That includes tactical nuclear weapons too that Russia stations in Belarus exactly for the purpose to protect Belarus if it's attacked by anybody. And now we have also additional statements from high-ranking Russian officials about inevitability of combined retaliatory steps against anyone who dares to attack Belarus. And well, hopefully some additional practical steps will be made also to reassure Belarusian leadership that Moscow gonna be there, right? Russia gonna stand there shoulder to shoulder with Belarusian troops. If anything happens, this is very important because yet again, some people in Belarusian leadership might have some doubts, and there might have a take that if Russian leadership is not in a hurry to restore deterrent with the collective West, while collective West countries, NATO member states, are killing Russian citizens on daily basis, then maybe Russia will not stand with us either, and would not do anything to upset Western elites. There might be that kind of fear, by the way, right, in minds of some people in Belarus, some representatives of a ruling class there, and there definitely additional steps are needed to make sure that everyone understands clearly that Russia going to be there if needed. This is very important, and when it comes to possible doubts among some leaders in Belarus, we have this report, dear friends, that Alexander Lukashenko signed a decree pardoning 32 people, 28 of whom were convinced of crimes of an extremist nature. 20 women and 12 men were pardoned. All of them pledged for a pardon, admitting their guilt and expressing remorse. Decree was signed on the eve of the Independence Day of the Republic of Belarus, and well, this is a you might say, well, this is a good step, isn't it? Right, on humanitarian track that President of Belarus is exercising his right to pardon individuals that committed crimes and improved, let's say, but we all understand that situation is a bit more complicated, and almost every time, Belarus had some contacts with American representatives, for example, with US representatives, there was pardons from Lukashenko, right? Pardons of certain individuals that were also imprisoned for extremist activity. And those people, vast majority of them, literally days after being liberated, or even on the same day, left the country. And maybe while pardoning these people that are basically assets of the Western secret services, right? Maybe Minsk is sending the message to Western elites that they are open for the talks. Could that be the case? Maybe Lukashenko is not convinced that Moscow gonna deter Western ruling class from attacking Belarus, and everyone understands it's not Zelensky, it's Western ruling class that makes such decisions. Maybe Lukashenko is not convinced that Moscow is going to deter Western ruling class, and he is kind of testing the ground for possible contacts with the Western ruling class. I don't know, but timing of all these developments is not random, that's for sure. And I hope Moscow will do whatever is necessary to make sure that no one has any doubts in Belarus, right? And best way to do so is to restore the deterrent with the collective West before Belarus is attacked. Right now, it's all up to Russian president. It's all up to Russian president. Day he will green light Russian military and security services, the deterrent will be restored. And no one in this world should ever have any doubts that Russian militaries and security services are well capable, absolutely well capable of restoring the deterrent with their Western ruling class, with the collective Western, whenever order comes, right? I think some important stuff there. And let's continue with some other news. Now, RIA Novosti is reporting that past night Russian Air Defense forces intercepted 179 drones that was launched by Kyiv regime with the assistance of NATO member states to strike deep into Russian territory. Drones were intercepted over the Astrakhan, Belgorod, Bryansk, Volgograd, Kaluga, Kursk, Oryol, Penza, Rostov, Saratov, Samara, Tver, Ulyanovsk regions, over the Krasnodar and Stavropol territories, the Moscow region, Crimea, and over the waters of the Azov and the Black Sea. Vast geography of these attacks, practically entire European part of the Russian Federation, and none of it would be possible without direct involvement of NATO member states in this war. And NATO member states are involved in this war because they cross the red lines time after time after time after time. They are completely ignoring any deterrent. They probably not even thinking that there is any deterrent in place, and they will continue act this irresponsibly until Moscow will greenlight Russian security services and militaries to restore that deterrent, to let everybody knows that they cannot behave this way, right? It might be too late already, very late, but better to do some right thing late than never. Also, when it comes to this long-range attacks, dear friends, it's not like just night attacks or something. It's a constant waves of weapons, these long-range weapons that are launched to strike deep into Russia, mostly drones, but every now and then missiles are launched too. And I will get to that point of missiles in a minute, but to highlight that Russian air defense forces are constantly 24-hour engaged with their hostile aerial targets. I can give you this update that yesterday, for example, from 7 a.m. in the morning to 9 p.m. in the evening, 121 drones were intercepted over their practically entire European part of Russian Federation. And unfortunately, there is no reason to believe that today going to be any different. We already have reports that drones were intercepted over the Moscow region. Drones were intercepted while they were approaching capital, and in a number of other directions also. And yet again, this is only possible because of the lack of deterrent with the NATO member states that needs to be restored as soon as possible. And unfortunately, of course, there are casualties among civilians as a result of these long-range attacks. In the Belgorod region, one civilian was killed, number of civilians wounded. In Donetsk People's Republic, 2 civilians were killed, 9 civilians were wounded. It was a so-called double tap attack when Kyiv regime forces targeted civilians, and when emergency services arrived to assist injured people, second wave of drone attacks, and overall 9 civilians were wounded, including emergency workers, and 2 civilians were killed. Also, reports are that Kyiv regime targeted the Penza city, industrial facility in the Penza city, and also scientific research institute in the same city, by the way, in Penza. And this is not all. Also, Kiev regime targeted Kurgan, city of the Russian Federation. And if you are wondering where these cities are, they are quite far away from Kiev controlled territory. This area is Penza, where Penza is located, a long way from Kiev controlled territory. I don't believe drones being launched from Ukraine to target Penza. And when it comes to Kurgan, that's the area, by the way, where Kurgan is located. Like twice further than, like 3 times even further than Penza is to Kiev controlled territory. And, dear friends, whenever anything is targeted formally by Kiev regime this far away, I always say in the southeastern territories of the Russian Federation, I always say that most definitely these drones are not being launched from Kiev-controlled territory, but were launched from Kazakhstani territory. And look, this is a map, right? This is Kazakhstan here. Massive republic, like 3 times bigger than Ukraine is, almost the size of entire Europe, right? So it was the second biggest republic in the Soviet Union. And because of this vastness of Kazakhstan, looks like local authorities are struggling big time to control their own airspace, their own territory, because I'm 100% convinced, by the way, that drones that are targeting Eastern Russian regions and Southern Eastern Russian regions are coming from Kazakhstani territory. I'm not saying that Kazakhstani authorities are, or secret services or militaries are involved in this, but what I'm saying is that British intelligence services and their Ukrainian proxies clearly infiltrated Kazakhstan, established assembly lines there for these drones, and are launching those drones from Kazakhstan. 100%, can be no doubts about it whatsoever. And something has to be done about it. Something has to be done about it. Yesterday, Russian president had a phone call. Yesterday or the day before, Russian President Putin had a conversation with the Kazakhstani President Tokayev, and who knows, maybe he spoke about these threats that are coming from Kazakhstan towards Russia also. We don't know, but Astana definitely has to do something to prevent any further attacks on Russia from its territory, because this is not normal. While these attacks are happening, Kazakhstani leadership is proving itself to be impotent to do anything. And it's not just Russia is looking at the situation, but China is looking at the situation too. And you can imagine how nervous China is now when they see that Kazakhstan is freely used by British intelligence and their Ukrainian proxies to target Russia. Kazakhstan will be, China will be extremely nervous with this not abnormality that is happening in Kazakhstan, right? So that's what is going on, by the way. I mean, in the Western propaganda, you might hear that, well, Kiev regime has such drones that they can fly 2,000 kilometers to strike even Kurgan city, for example, there. But these drones were not launched from Kiev-controlled territory. These drones were launched from Kazakhstani territory. That's the nuance that you're not going to be told by the Western so-called media. And it's not just Kazakhstan, obviously, that are used by enemies of Russia to target Russian Federation. At least Kazakhstani leadership is not involved in these attacks, right? I'm quite sure about it. It's, of course, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. These republics, these NATO member states, are also used for attacks on the Russian Federation. But unlike Kazakhstan, leadership of these republics, these NATO member states, are involved in these attacks and are authorizing these attacks to take place. And on this topic, and whenever attacks are happening on the Leningrad region of the Russian Federation or St. Petersburg city, of course, every time this happens, airspace, and potentially ground also for launches of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland are used constantly. And on this subject, dear friends, I have interesting update for you that Russian pranksters, Vovan, and what is the name of another one? Lexus. Vovan and Lexus that are pranked a lot of officials all over the world. Also pranked Estonian official, presidential advisor. They presented themselves during the conversation as to be representatives of a Kyiv regime, and this advisor of Estonia's president told them in a conversation that Tallinn is helping Kyiv with attacks on St. Petersburg, as headline here on RIA Novosti says. And you can check the video, by the way, on their channel. Vovan and Lexus have their channel, by the way. You can search for it, and you can take a look at the entirety of this conversation. I give you some fragments, important fragments of it. So, National Security Advisor to the President of Estonia, Madis Roll, admitted that Tallinn is assisting the Ukrainian armed forces with attacks on St. Petersburg, according to pranksters Vovan and Lexus. They should be called political pranksters, right? Because their pranks are always linked to politics and geopolitics. I mean, they are doing some unbelievable pranks, by the way, on these high-ranking officials, right? For years now, for years. And their admission is, of course, big on behalf of this Estonian official. He basically says that, yes, Estonian authorities are authorizing attacks on the Russian Federation, participating in these attacks. By saying so, this individual make Estonia legit target straight away for Russian retaliatory strikes. We all knew that Estonia is involved, obviously, right? I spoke about this numerous times. But now we have admission on tape, that admission of Estonian officials, that they are targeting Russia on tape. So they called him, Vovan and Lexus called this person on behalf of Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Rustem Umerov. Details of the conversation were published on the Telegram channel of the pranksters. And there are little quote here from that conversation. I hope that if any coordination issues arise, I can help. Let me know. I'm sure our defense ministers are in touch on this issue and are making efforts in this direction, Roll stated. At the same time, he claims that Moscow is to blame for incidents involving Ukrainian drones in the Baltic countries. Yeah, I mean, Ukrainian/NATO drones are failing there, and they blame Russia for it. Okay. And by the way, this is of course information that contradicts a recent statement of Russian president when he said that European countries are not targeting Russia directly, not involved directly. He has something along these lines, and I commented on this issue, and I said straight away that either Putin is misinformed or I don't know why he's saying this stuff, because whenever St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region are attacked, always, literally always, airspace and most definitely ground of NATO member states, European NATO member states, are used. And now, Estonian official on tape confirming this. What we knew all along. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting. Also, dear friends, when it comes to these long-range attacks of Kyiv regime and their NATO backers on Russian territory, well, they did manage to destroy bridge, Mariupol Donetsk, on the Mariupol Donetsk highway. Bridge is located between Privolny and Kasyanovka, and you can see on your screen results of attacks. Some sources say a couple of dozens of drones were used there to destroy this bridge. modified drones that can carry up to 200 kilograms of explosives. And well, unfortunately, bridge was destroyed. I think it will take for Russian military engineers maybe, I don't know, 24 hours, and some temporary alternative construction will be built there so that communication through this highway will be restored. But it is unfortunate, of course, it is unfortunate that this happened. Kiev regime and its NATO backers are unable to change or to influence much battlefield itself, where they are losing literally on daily basis. All they can do is these long-range attacks, by the way, right? And they are doing it, right? NATO, dozens of NATO member states are producing thousands of these long-range, medium, small, long-range drones, and are transferring those drones on the Kiev controlled territory, and then on daily basis are used. And unfortunately, every now and then they are managing to strike some important logistical lines, energy lines, and so on. But yet again, no one should have any illusions in this world about these strikes. There is no way with these long-range attacks on the Russian Federation, either the regime or its NATO backers going to be able to turn the tide on the battlefield. Just not happening, right? If anything, Russian troops are accelerating advance. But minor conveniences are created for Russian civilians, first and foremost. That's what they are doing, creating inconveniences. In some cases minor, in some cases maybe more severe, but inconveniences for Russian civilians. And why should we be surprised, by the way? These attacks are orchestrated first and foremost by London, by British ruling class, British intelligence, British militaries, and if they are known for anything, is for terror campaigns all over the world. So they launched terror campaign against Russian people, and unfortunately, in some cases, they're managing to implement certain pain on society in different regions, but they're not going to be able to turn the tide on the battlefield. Not happening. Yes, they destroyed bridge. Okay, in 12 to 24 hours, the Russian militaries will build their alternative construction right there, or somewhere around, right? So that this highway will continue to be operational. And when it comes to this terror campaign, by the way, that Western ruling class is engaged in actively and their Ukrainian proxies, well, looks like they have a new direction of this terrorism, which is that they are bombing now fields with the crops. And this is extremely dangerous. I mean, this everyone should understand how dangerous this stuff is, right? Because Russia is a breadbasket of this world, right? If Russia is not able to export food, people literally gonna die from starvation in many regions of this world. That's how important Russian agricultural sector is for the humanity. And but because Western ruling class never cared about humanity, they are pushing the regime now to conduct attacks on fields with the crops. And we have reports that 100 hectares of crops were destroyed by fire after after farm was attacked in the village of Gladkovka in Kherson region. 100 hectares, you might say, well, it's just tiny area. But, by the way, this might be the beginning of yet another wave of a terror campaign that Western ruling class plans to launch. And yet again, if Russia, if as a result of these attacks, by the way, significant volume of crops will be destroyed on Russian territory, that will mean starvation, global starvation. Additional information about nature of the Western ruling class. If you had any doubts that Western elites are evil force and existential threat for humanity, you have an additional indicator that that's exactly the case. Also, dear friends, I mentioned there that earlier, a few minutes ago, that it's not just drone attacks, long-range drone attacks on the Russian Federation, but every now and then, the regime and its NATO backers are deploying missiles. Also, British-made Storm Shadow missiles, French-made Scalp PG missiles, HIMARS missiles are used. They're made by US, and I have not heard for quite a while about any launches of ATACMS missiles, but about 500 of those ATACMS were already used against Russia by Kyiv regime, according to some reports. At least that's the number that was transferred by Americans to Kyiv regime. Tactical missile with a range of 300 to 500 kilometers about. And but all those weapons there are very small in numbers, right? Neither UK, neither France, neither US has a large stockpile of this type of missiles. And now, and that's why they were actively working for quite a while to start their mass production of relatively cheaper cruise missiles and the tactical missiles, and then designate those weapons as a Ukrainian one for plausible deniability sake. And one such a type of missile is a Flamingo cruise missile, British missile, designated as a Ukrainian one, Ukrainian build. And on 27th of June, there was attacks with Flamingo missiles on Russian Belgorod city. And initially I shared photo, video materials about it, not during the live stream, because live stream is a public broadcaster, but I shared some footage on my private channel on Patreon and Boosty. And now big Russian channels also share the video of this attack. And I think I can share too, because it's no longer secret to anybody. It was never a secret, by the way. Once these videos get to ordinary people, whoever wants to see aftermath of strikes or anything like that, they already have it, right? But nevertheless, there are certain restrictions here in Russia introduced, and I have to obey these rules, right? But now, because I see these videos in a big channel, I guess it's okay to share. And I want to share this video to show you that looks like British engineers managed to improve precision of these Flamingo missiles that are carrying hundreds of kilos of explosive materials. And I think it will be Flamingo missile among other systems that Western ruling class gonna use to target Moscow, some other directions, but first and foremost Moscow, with large-scale attacks towards end of August, September, and then during the winter. So this is important developments, and hopefully Russian president will authorize Russian military and security services to restore deterrent with the collective West before these long-range attack missile strikes will become a daily routine. And when it comes to video itself, earlier reports were the Flamingos were extremely inaccurate, but giving Flamingo, and this is Flamingo missile, by the way. Look how massive the explosion is. So it clearly carries a larger volume of explosive materials. And two missiles did manage to strike this Enterprise there in Volgograd. That's a second missile. And looks like precision was improved of these missiles. But anyways, giving the volume of explosion, you can imagine what might happen if this type of missile strikes a high-rise apartment building. They are flying low to avoid radar detections, right? And Moscow is a high-rise city, by the way, right? There is thousands and thousands of high-rise buildings here, apartment buildings, office buildings, and so on. So you can imagine what might happen if this missile strikes apartment building. Depend on what kind of, where this missile strikes and what kind of constructional damage building will receive. There is a risk that entire complex might collapse, right, and kill hundreds of people, potentially, right? So extremely dangerous, obviously extremely dangerous developments, and hopefully Russian president will not wait until this long-range missile attacks on Russian Federation becomes a literally daily routine, as it is the case with the drones. And you know, dear friends, I was warning a long time ago that if the deterrent is not restored, these drone attacks, large-scale drone attacks, long-range and large-scale drone attacks on Russian Federation, gonna take place literally on daily basis, and that's exactly what happened. You know, so one don't have to be genius to understand that Western ruling class will go with the same route in regards to missiles, and they already are doing it, by the way. Already, there is a mass production of Flamingo missiles and other missiles too that Kiev regime and their NATO backers will probably stockpile. They will use some every now and then. They will stockpile this missile and begun large-scale attacks on the Russian Federation, including on Moscow towards late August, potentially in September. That's because towards the end of September, there is elections here in Russia, parliamentary elections, and they would try to cause some internal conflicts here in Russia with these attacks. And then they're going to intensify attacks, especially during the winter time. And you can imagine, by the way, when it's minus 20, minus 30 outside, if this missile strikes communications that provide buildings with their hot water for warming, then if emergency services are overwhelmed, damage could be colossal. Damage there could be colossal because those pipes will freeze, right? And then you have to remove all of it. It will be a tremendous engineering challenge. Nothing to be said about risks to lives, right, of the civilians. So we cannot allow this to happen, and hopefully Russian security services and militaries will receive green light to restore deterrent with the collective West as soon as possible, before these missiles fly every day in dozens towards Russian cities, including Moscow. And they want to strike Moscow because Moscow is the capital of Russia, right? They want to, first and foremost, that's why they are targeting Moscow. Let's see how the situation will develop. But yet again, we should always keep in mind that no matter number of these long-range attacks and so on, in no circumstances, neither Kiev regime, neither its NATO backers going to be able to turn the tide on the battlefield. Not possible, right? They can create problems for Russian people, and they do create problems for Russian people, different problems in different regions, but they're not going to be able to influence the battlefield or the spirit of their people. It's obvious. Let's continue with some other news, dear friends. Although, before I go through very important developments in regards to some other subjects, let me just highlight, dear friends, that this project, this media project, exists only as long as I have your support, community support. And if you like my work, if you want and if you can to help me maintain this project, please do so. You can do it through several means. You can donate to this channel through PayPal. You can donate to this channel through Boosty platforms. The links are under this video in description box. You can subscribe to my Patreon page or page on Boosty, where I have extra content on a regular basis, more than 500 videos, by the way, exclusive content on Patreon. And every day in the morning, if there is no technical issues, I have a first news update there on the Patreon and Boosty. And I have plans to other also additional content to my Patreon and Boosty soon. And so, yes, all the links, dear friends, all the links are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And in order this project to be in a safe place, our community needs to double, dear friends, at least double on the Patreon and Boosty. And this is a very challenging process, very difficult process. Unfortunately, my channels on YouTube and Rumble are in shadow banned, so I don't really have much of opportunities to reach wider audience, right? So that community will increase and support for the channel will increase also. And therefore, I'm fully dependent on people, and this project fully dependent on the people that knows about existence of my channel, like these channels of mine, my content, and want and can support. So yet again, many thanks to everybody who ever supported and continues to support. And if you want to join supporters, you can do it through several means. Links are under this video in the description box. And also, dear friends, of course, you can use the super chat feature on Rumble. I forgot to mention that my channel on Rumble is monetized, so you can use that super chat feature there. I dropped Rumble link in the YouTube chat right now. And also, there is a premium gift subscription on Rumble that you can use to donate. And then this premium subscription gift you can give to someone or just keep it to yourself. But many members of our community, maybe not many, but several members of our community are using this premium subscription gift card to donate. And I know on bigger channels, these features are actively used to donate to the channels. So there are some quite a few ways how you can support. Yet again, many thanks to everybody who ever supported and continues to support. And on the Rumble, I can see super chat from Scooby. Thank you very much, Scooby, for your super chat. I will react on it straight after news segment. And let's continue with the news. And as I said, it's going to be bigger update, by the way, today, big program, because a lot is happening. And well, I will continue with this report that NATO member states, NATO basically decided that they're going to allocate another 70 billion euros for weapons to prolong this war against Russian Federation. Formally, they are allocating this money for a Kyiv regime, but in reality, we know what is going on. 70 billion euros. It's a lot, isn't it? Italy blocked a proposal to simultaneously allocate dozens of billions of euros for 2027 also. But when it comes to this year, NATO countries now going to find these 70 billion euros to give it to Kiev for weapons. And well, compared to 70 billion euro, of course, 3.9 billion euro does not really look that impressive. That European Union is also allocating for the regime, also for weapons, specifically for drones, as Ursula von der Leyen, head of European Commission, stated there. And you would think Zelensky will be happy with this much money, right? 90 billion from European Union as a loan that never going to be returned. Also, dozens of billions of dollars from EU member or NATO member states through separate programs. Plus this 70 billion that NATO promised to provide, right? 70 billion euros. And a lot more, right? God knows. At this point, probably everybody lost count how many hundreds of billions of dollars is being, or the euros being allocated. to prolong this war against Russian Federation. But if you think Zelensky is going to be happy about it, this is not the case, because he is asking for additional 6.6 billion euros from EU peace fund specifically, also for military purpose. Reuters reports that Kiev asks the EU for 6.6 billion euro from the peace fund. I mean, that's the irony of the true face of the Western world, isn't it? I mean, peace fund for the weapons. I mean, you cannot make this shit up, isn't it? I mean, it is what it is. Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhail Fedorov, in a letter to Brussels, demands that all funds of the European Peace Fund be directed to military aid for Kiev. We are talking about 6.6 billion euro, which were intended for compensations to the EU countries that supplied weapons to Ukraine. Kiev wants to take this money for itself, but Poland has already stated that it will not give up its due payments. And when it comes to Poland and Ukraine, I will get to that point, by the way. There is update about this confrontation between the two, but yet again, you can see the appetite of these corrupt neo-Nazis and the mass murderers in Ukraine, right? No matter how much money you're going to give them, they will ask for more. They are like pigs, right? No matter how much food you're going to give to pigs, they will never stop asking for more. I think that's good enough comparison, right? Although some people might say that comparison will be very much insulting for the pigs, right? If you compare pigs to Zelensky and the rest of the garbage and the scumbags, right? Either in the leadership of Kiev regime or in the leadership of Western world, generally speaking. But anyways, when it comes to military aid for Kiev regime, also there is information that agreement was reached between Kiev regime and Sweden about deliveries of Swedish-made Saab Gripen fighter jets. And according to reports, 16 fighter jets will be 16 Gripen CD modification fighter jets will be transferred to Kiev regime in 2027, and another 16 Gripen E type of modifications will be transferred from 2029. And even though there are reports that Kiev regime already sent their pilots in Sweden to undergo training for these planes. Even though there are reports that Kiev regime sent engineers to learn how to service these planes, in reality, I'm quite sure, by the way, it's going to be NATO staff that will operate with these planes, either in the skies or on the ground. And the best decision, I think, on our part, on Russian part, to minimize the threat will be to literally completely eliminate Saab's factory where jets are produced. I think it's an absolutely legit target. As Lockheed Martin is an absolutely legit target too, by the way, where F-16s are produced. And if I was Russian president, of course, I will not hesitate to eliminate literally every factory in all NATO member states that are even slightly participated in this war against Russia. But yet again, Russian president is Vladimir Putin, and let's see what he will decide. But clearly, Saab is a legit target to be eliminated after this official decision. And hopefully will be eliminated, by the way. Hopefully will be eliminated. All it takes one nuke, literally one nuke, and there is no Saab no more, period. You're not going to be able to destroy massive factory with one or two missiles with ordinary warhead, but one nuke, there is no factory left, period. and should be done, man. I'm all for that. Just give them a 1 hour warning, or okay, 1 day warning to evacuate and launch a nuke. Just eliminate the place, right? Classic. RIA Novosti is also reporting that Russia has closed. So, and by the way, don't give me this nonsense that, well, nuclear weapons cannot be used and why? Who says that? Who says that, man? I think nuclear weapons should be used whenever need is in that. And I think clearly, based on Russian updated nuclear doctrine, we are in a position to deploy tactical nuclear weapons, to deploy nuclear weapons in general. Was Russian strategical infrastructure was targeted by non-nuclear country, but with assistance of nuclear states? Yes. Answer is yes, right? Was Russian nuclear triad targeted? Answer is again yes. Is Russian citizens are killed in thousands? Answer is yes. So Russian nuclear doctrine is very clear. Then we have every right to retaliate and retaliate with nukes. And there are certain targets in these NATO member states that you're not going to be able to destroy with 1 missile or even with 10 missiles, right? It's more effective to drop nuke. Just do it, and there is no more problems there. And that will be a good lesson to everybody. I think we have to teach the lesson. European ruling class and nuclear weapons will do that, right? I'm no longer a supporter of retaliating with the conventional weaponry. No, it's too late for that now. I am all in support of deploying nuclear weapons against the European NATO member states. Nuclear weapons, period, right? For conventional weapons, it's just too freaking late now, I think, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. RIA Novosti is reporting that Russia has closed several border crossings with Finland, Latvia, and Estonia. Okay, interesting. I commented on this in the morning's update on Patreon, and there I was, I said that maybe this information is somewhat related. This decision to shut down certain border crossings are related to possibility that Russian president is, has changed his mind about restraint policy and is in support of restoring the deterrent now. And if so, which will mean that we're gonna strike NATO countries, probably with the conventional weapons. I don't think Putin will authorize nuclear strikes. I would prefer nuclear strikes on them to make sure, right? To make sure that there going to be no need for additional ones, right? Retaliations. But okay, Russian president might say there, let's take action with the conventional weapons. Let's restore deterrent now. Things went way too far. And it is, by the way, true. Situation went way too far, and Russia is suffering significantly in economical, financial terms also now due to these long-range attacks on Russian Federation, right? It might be minor or more serious inconvenience for people, but economically, Russia is beginning to suffer big time, right? It's not like a country going to collapse today or tomorrow or day after. No, country not going to collapse, but losses are significant, and this has to stop. This just has to stop. And so maybe when I see this report, that was my reaction. Maybe Russian president is planning to abandon his restraint policy that led nowhere, and authorize Russian military and security services to restore deterrent with the collective West. And in that case, of course, reinforcing border lines will make sense. Reinforcing border lines, border crossings will definitely make sense, because if Russian president takes, let's say, this is pure speculation on my behalf, if Russian president will choose to take action against, let's say, European NATO member states with their conventional weapons, they're going to retaliate. To save the face, they're going to retaliate with also conventional weapons. On a similar scale, maybe they will try to retaliate in a bigger scale, right? And who knows, maybe they will launch invasion. maybe they will launch invasion too, in number of on number of directions. Um, it's a possibility. It's a possibility, and in that case, if there is such a scenario that is being worked by Russian side, of course, makes all the sense to shut down border crossings and make sure that there are as minimum civilians in area as possible, and your militaries are ready to take whatever actions are necessary if enemy dares to cross the border. That's what I think. Although who knows what's going on? Maybe Russian president still thinks restraint policy is good, and maybe he shut down these border crossings for some other reasons. I don't know. But that's interesting. That's interesting stuff there. As of now, it was the NATO member states that were shutting down borders with Russia. Now Russia is initiating border closures, so it's important, I guess, right? Also, dear friends, I mentioned already that there is skirmishes, political skirmishes, isn't it, between Poland and Ukraine, between Poland and the Kiev regime, let me say this way, because Zelensky's regime does not represent this creation of the Bolsheviks, Ukraine. Absolutely not. Definitely not represents people that live there. But anyways, Poland issued an EU warning to Kiev regime. Defense Minister of Poland, Kosnia Kamiec, has stated that there is no way Ukraine gonna join EU with Bandera. He went all over the Kiev regime for glorifying Nazis, and you know what's going on. I reported there many times on this escalation. Warsaw decided that now is the time to escalate with the Kiev regime for glorification of the Nazis. Although Polish elites knew all along, since 2014, and even before that coup d'etat that happened in Kiev, that Western ruling class, Washington, London, their secret services were planning to use Nazis and the fascists to overthrow Yanukovych's government, and they did that, right? But for whatever reason, until now, Polish elites were keeping quiet. Now they decided that it's time to get engaged in these hostilities with the Kiev regime. I think this is happening because Poland is preparing to reclaim former Polish territories in Western Ukraine, which is some 70%, by the way, about 70% of Western Ukraine. It's not a small area, right? Poland may become biggest European country after that, if they actually reclaim their territories. Anyways, there is a lot of back and forth between Warsaw and Kiev nowadays. Poland even suspended transfer of MiG-29 fighter jets to Kiev regime. They come up with some justifications for that. And also Polish media outlets are going wild, by the way. Polish society, majority, 60+%, has extremely unfavorable attitude towards Ukrainians now, towards Ukraine. And Polish media is going wild, right? And already some strong demands can be heard in Poland in regards to Ukraine, Ukrainian Nazis, fascists, and so on. And there is an interesting report from Dnieper Gazeta, even though Polish and Russian is in Slavic languages, right? Dnieper, I have no freaking idea what Dnieper means. Gazeta is a newspaper. But Dnieper, день, дневная газета, ежедневная газета. It's something like everyday newspaper. Polish members of our community. Am I correct in my guess? Anyways, Dnieper Gazeta, Pravna is probably Pravna. Truth, Pravda. Reports reburial of Stepan Bandera will take place despite Poland's threats, right? And that's gonna be slapped, by the way, in face of Polish elites, of course. If Zelensky and his criminal associates will now come up with this large-scale show and celebration of reburial of one of the leading figures of Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists, Stepan Bandera, right? And if you think, no, 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 Kiev regime will not go that far, I mean, you are so wrong, man. You are so wrong because today, so-called parliament in Ukraine, state rather, actually voted to create in favor of creation of their national pantheon, which involves the worship outstanding, in quotes, outstanding Ukrainians, including scumbags from OUN and UPA. These Nazi groups of Second World War period that were collaborating with the Nazi Germany, and they're killing hundreds of thousands of civilians, including Polish, ethnically Polish civilians. They killed there's different numbers. Some say 100,000 Poles, some say 300,000 Poles, but they massacred dozens of thousands of Polish people also. And Polish society, maybe not everybody, but many people in Poland still remember these tragedies and these crimes that were committed by Ukrainian Nazis, that were led by people like freaking Bandera. And Bandera gonna be in that pantheon, and they're gonna do this rebellion process. It's gonna be like big show, and I can imagine that Polish elites will go crazy, man. Polish elites probably will go full crazy mode. Right? They are already barely managing to keep their emotions, right? Because they never liked Ukrainians and Ukrainian Nazis, by the way. Let's be real. They only tolerated Kiev regime because Western ruling class was using Kiev regime and continues to use Kiev regime and citizens of Ukraine against Russia. And Polish people do hate, and Polish elites especially do hate Russia, right? But yet again, now looks like Polish elites think it is, time is coming when they have to prepare ground to reclaim former Polish territories that are Western Ukraine now, and they are no longer exercising restraint in regards to Ukrainian Nazis, fascists, glorification of Nazism in Ukraine, and so on. I wonder if Western media ever reported about anything about these developments, Father. Did they? I don't think so, really. And it's not just Poland now that escalates with Zelensky. More and more voices from Central and Eastern Europe are here now, rising. More and more voices are rising with their extreme criticism of glorification of the Nazis on the Kiev-controlled territory, including from Czech Republic. And RT is reporting about it. Czech coalition party will seek to strip Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky of their country's highest state honor after he named their military units after World War II nationalist formations accused of Nazi-era atrocities. Local media have reported. The Czech Freedom and Director Democracy Party said on Tuesday that it would seek backing in the parliament for a recommendation that President Petro Pavel revokes Zelensky's order of a white line. Zelensky received the award in October 2022 from then President of Czechia, Miloš Zeman, for its leadership during the Ukraine conflict. So after Poland stripped Zelensky of a White Eagle order, which is also highest in Poland, now talks are that Czech Republic should also revoke Czech highest award, this medal or order of White Lion, and probably they will do this because, by the way, Poland is a serious country. We might like it or not, but Poland is much more serious country than many things, much more capable, and powerful, no, maybe not necessarily in military terms, but in some other terms, right? In political terms, and so on. Poland definitely is more capable than Hungary is, right? And when Poland is escalating with Kiev regime, that means that its neighbors will follow because they don't want to be on a bad note with the Warsaw. And again, Poland is not Hungary. It's much bigger and much stronger. Even though I think personally that Polish armed forces, right now at least, will be obliterated by Kiev regime's forces if they will clash right now. Even though Kiev regime's forces are badly beaten by Russian troops. But still, they are more capable, in my personal opinion, than entire freaking Polish army. But nevertheless, Poland is a huge country by European standards. Huge country, one of the biggest there. And they're going to become even bigger if they will manage to reclaim former eastern Polish territories. That makes up to 70% of Western Ukraine now. And they have some allies too, right? They have ambitions, they have allies, they have economy and the money, right, to support these ambitions, at least partially. So it's not just Czech Republic. Others going to follow, by the way. Others going to follow example of Poland and step by step escalate with their Kiev regime. And for a record, by the way, Poles hate Ukrainian Nazis much more than they hate Russians. And you might be surprised that Poles don't hate Belarusians. Many Poles consider Belarusians to be Poles too. I mean, surprisingly, right? During the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, most of Belarus was occupied by that basically Polish Empire, right? And I don't know how well you know history of that period, but well, there was times when that Polish Empire, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, was able to even occupy Moscow, although it didn't end well for them, as it did not end well for Napoleon and his forces too, right? But yes, there was such a page in history. So, and I'm saying so to highlight that Polish elites are ambitious elites. They see themselves and in Poland potential of empire and empire building, right? And they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And by the way, Germany is nervous for a reason due to economical and political rise of Poland, because if Poles hate anyone, probably after, I mean, Germans are among them too. They hate Germans too, but right. Anyways, let's continue with some other news. When I start talking about history, then it's like a philosophical discussion, right? I just go all over the place, and at times I'm forgetting that it's a news update, for God's sake, not a conversation about history. Anyways, dear friends, let's continue. And yesterday, that was, isn't it, or day before yesterday, there was an explosion, terrorist attack in Monaco, right, where a former Ukraine citizen, Ukrainian Cypriot oligarch was targeted, and the two people that were with him. Initial reports were that a woman that was with the oligarch, Yermolov, was his wife. That woman, as a result of explosion, lost legs, but later on, a number of sources reported that no, it was not her wife, but other woman with whom this Yermolov had a baby. They had relationships, right? And this teenage kid that was harmed during this terrorist attack in Monaco was allegedly their son. Could be case, I don't know, right? But wife of Yermolov stated that she was not harmed during this attack, but some woman was, right? And that woman unfortunately lost the legs. Her legs were amputated by doctors to save her life. Yermolov and that teenager, they had also serious injuries, but not life-threatening, at least as of now. there are no reports that doctors are afraid for their lives. They are controlling the situation, right? And I said straight away, once this happened, while commenting on that, that of course this is key regime, buddy. Of course this is key regime. They went after this oligarch because they had a dispute over business. Zelensky and his henchmen were demanding, more money that this oligarch was willing to pay them. Also, this oligarch known to be supporter of certain politicians, public figures that are opposing Zelensky. And so clearly, Zelensky and his inner circle had numerous reasons to take him out. And they are so out of touch with reality, these idiots, right? That they decided to conduct terrorist attack in Monaco, by the way, right? This place which was branded as a safe haven for all sorts of filth from all over the world, right? Ultra rich and ultra powerful filth. And so, even though a number of media outlets and public figures in the West try to link this terrorist attack to Russia straight away, because whenever anything happens, they're going to blame Russia, isn't it? What else are they going to do? If it's too hot, I wonder, was there reports in France that this heat wave was Russia's fault? I'm quite sure some politicians, some media outlets probably speculated on the matter that maybe this heat wave in Europe caused by Russia, right? Probably there was some speculations on that, but that's a whole different topic. Well, I said it's a key regime, right? And well, now even big names in French media are saying the same, and even public figures. And let's start with the public figures. French mayor of city wrote, has key regime really gone out of control if it's targeting citizens who refuse to obey its orders in this way while orchestrating terrorist attacks and assassination attempts? This was stated by mayor of the French city of Fréjus while he was commenting on this terrorist attack, right? I don't know this Fréjus city where he is. It's somewhere there, I guess, next to Monaco, but it's official. Nevertheless, this is a mayor of a city, right? No, not mayor of Paris, but still it's an official that is saying this. And I knew, by the way, that there are going to be more and more reports that will link Kiev regime with this terrorist attack, right? Attempts to blame Russia are not going to fly. Not going to fly. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And a big name in French media actually went after Zelensky's regime. Figaro news outlet reported that investigators are working and considering as a primary investigation line involvement of the SBU, key regime's security service, in this terrorist attack. And of course, without information, Figaro, which is a big name in France, right? I have never been in France. I don't know firsthand, but based on overall opinion on the people, Figaro is a big name in France, right? Members of our community from Fifth Republic can confirm that. So Figaro went to say that yes, investigation is considering that SBO was involved in this terrorist attack, and this is a big deal, by the way. This is a big deal because, Monaco was kept as a safe haven for all sorts of filth from all over the world for a reason, right? And the last thing they want, Western ruling class, to happen in Monaco is a freaking terrorist attacks and assassination attempts and stuff, right? So therefore, there are going to be some consequences. There are going to be some consequences, and there may be this terrorist attack in Monaco that orchestrated Zelensky and his henchmen will be the last drop for influential forces among globalist club that will fast track tremendously removal of Zelensky from the office. Could be the case. And also, dear friends, also when it comes to reasons why Zelensky would attack this person, turns out that it could be not just money and businesses that Zelensky wanted to take from him, but this person, Yermolayev, allegedly was planning to share with the European officials information about corruption in Ukraine. Ukrainian businessman Vadim Yermolayev, injured in the explosion in Monaco on Monday, was considering organizing a hearing in the European Parliament on corruption in Ukraine shortly before the assassination attempt. Gluder Monek, former intelligence officer for France's Directorate General for External Security, told the RIA Novosti. Several weeks ago, Vadim Yermolayev considered the possibility of organizing expert hearing in the European Parliament on the issue of corruption in Ukraine. This person, this former French intelligence officer, said. He also added that he personally discussed the European Parliament hearing on the Ukrainian corruption with Yermolayev's team. So that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal, by the way. This guy was planning to go to European Parliament, and where Zelensky is being presented as a freaking hero and a genius of the modern times, and he was planning to tell everybody who that creature actually is. And that could be the additional reason, obviously, for Zelensky to attempt to authorize this terrorist attack. Either way, I wonder how long, by the way, existence of Zelensky going to be tolerated by the Western elites, right? Maybe it's too much already. No? Maybe, by the way, and we know who might replace Zelensky. We know at least several names that are being considered by Washington and London as a potential replacement of Zelensky, and one of the candidates that have probably highest chances, because he is a British candidate, is Zaluzhny, former head of Kiev regime's general staff. And reports are these days, and all the media outlets are, for whatever reason, paying attention to this, that Zaluzhny allegedly announced his intention to participate in Ukrainian presidential elections. Former commander-in-chief of Ukrainian Armed Forces and Ukrainian ambassador to the United Kingdom, Valery Zaluzhny, announced in a conversation with Vladimir Zelensky that he will run in the presidential election, according to publication in Ukrainskaya Pravda. According to sources, Zelensky ultimately asked the former commander-in-chief direct question: if elections are held in the fall, will you run? And according to Ukrainskaya Pravda sources, he received a clear answer: yes, I will. Publication states. And of course he will, if Zelensky is not going to assassinate him. And you think Brits took Zaluzhny in London and forced Zelensky to appoint him as Ukraine's ambassador into UK for what reason exactly? Because they were afraid that Zelensky and his henchmen are going to go after him and kill him, right? And they might still try, by the way, if Zelensky is okay with authorizing terrorist attack in Monaco. That was considered to be one of the safest places on the planet, especially for all sorts of filth, right? All these ultra rich and ultra powerful, then you can imagine what Zelensky can pull off in London. which is far to be safe place, right, for anybody. And so, okay, interesting. Maybe Western ruling class will say that well, we had enough of this clown Zelensky. It is time for him to uh, go to other world or something, right? And probably they will eliminate him. I don't think Zelensky gonna be left alive. Western secret services will kill him, most likely. They're not gonna allow him to run to Israel. By the way, they will kill him and they will blame Russia for it. Then elections will be launcher played out. It's gonna be theater, of course. There can be no elections in Ukraine, objectively speaking. And well, they will appoint Zaluzhny as their next president. And maybe this will happen this autumn. I don't know. Of course, I have no freaking idea what kind of plans British ruling class has, and looks like they are Pierre Skripka, as one say goes, right? Looks like it's a British ruling class that is calling the shots, not Washington, but London. So we will see. We will see. Also, dear friends, Middle East, of course. Middle East, a couple of updates about the situation in the Middle East. Representatives of US President Donald Trump, Witkoff, and Kushner had talks in Qatar on a possible agreement with Iran, according to Bloomberg. Okay, by the way, there was no face-to-face meeting with no Iranians. Meanwhile, and this is all waste of time, by the way, right? We all understand that this memorandum of understanding, as I have said many times before, and everything else is just attempt on behalf of Western ruling class and their proxies, US, Israel, and their allies, to buy some time and better prepare for next phase of a war, which will happen later autumn or early winter. That's my take on the matter, right? So I don't consider anything that is happening right now in regards to Middle Eastern to be serious developments. It's just a clown show, basically, right? Orchestrated by Western ruling class to buy some time and better prepare. That's all. But meanwhile, Netanyahu continues to act in a way that only he can. And he said that war with Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas will never end. According to Netanyahu, the country is now stronger than ever. He's talking about Israel. And you know what? I don't even want to continue. Israel is weaker than ever, if you ask me. First and foremost, from political and moral standpoint. I mean, reputation of Israel was never so bad as it is right now. Never so bad as it is right now, man. And everybody, or almost everybody, hates Israel, man, for all the crimes that they committed against humanity, right? So to say that Israel is stronger than ever, I mean, come on, man. Netanyahu is clearly psycho, right? Inadequate creature, period. Also, Israel warns that war might resume within the 2 days as US pushes for ahead with the Iran technical talks in Doha. And of course, there going to be no next phase of war in the 2 days. It's all absurd. But in order to keep instability in the region, fuel have to be poured every day. Every day, there are going to be strong statements, tit for tat exchange. Every other day, there have to be tit for tat exchange of fire between the sides, and some other stuff have to happen to keep instability in the region. Because yet again, there is no actual intention on behalf of Western ruling class to de-escalate anything. They are buying some time. That's all. And Iran is also using this time, of course, to prepare as much as they possibly can for next phase of war, which is going to be, which will involve ground invasion of Iran too, and hopefully Iran will withstand that attack also, and they have good chances that they will. They will. Meanwhile, Abbas Araghchi, foreign minister of Iran, who understands everything, by the way, right? He knows perfectly well what's going on. But due to position, of course, he have to act accordingly to the situation. He's a diplomat after all. But nevertheless, he made quite interesting statement on his Twitter X, I believe. The terms of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding are crystal clear and they're public for all to see. POTUS has committed the US to muzzling its pets in Tel Aviv. If they ignore their master, Iran will school them. Any threats against our people and the leadership will receive an immediate, powerful response, stated Abbas Araghchi. And I don't think anyone has any doubts that Iranian leadership is not bluffing. They say stuff, they do stuff, right? They already proved themselves. So when they say something, they mean that, actually, right? And so Galibaf, another high-ranking official of Iran, Speaker of the Parliament, also clear for everybody that Hormuz Strait is kind of free of toll for only 60 days, as long as this memorandum of understanding is in place. After that, it will be under Iranian control. No scenario in which we retreat from this position. These are our territorial waters, Galibaf stated, and he is factually accurate. It is obviously mostly Iran's territorial waters and also Oman's territorial waters. That's where Strait of Hormuz is, actually, right, when it comes to passing the strait. And so even though this approach makes many countries nervous, I think Iran fought for this, right? And they're not going to back down. They're not going to back down, and they're not going to use explicit language while describing for what company is going to pay for passing through Strait of Hormuz. They will come up with a very diplomatic language and explanation. It's going to be fees for the service and the security and this and that, but they're going to take money, man. Every tanker, every cargo vessel that will pass through Strait of Hormuz will pay some tax, period. If of course, strategical stability is maintained in the region, but unfortunately, I'm quite sure towards the end of this year, late autumn, early winter, Western ruling class will go for a next phase of a war, and everyone will forget for quite a while about Strait of Hormuz and toll and the rest of the stuff. Entire region gonna blow up. And US is preparing, as I said, the Western ruling class is buying time and their proxies too, and the US is no exception, of course, and they are deploying more and more military assets towards the region in this process of the preparation for the next phase of the war, which will include ground invasion also. And they're on initial stages of a ground invasion. If you are attacking from the sea, what you need? Assault vessels, right? And interestingly, USS Boxer amphibious warship entered the Middle East region, according to US SATCOM. This is official statement, right? So US is deploying more assets in the region, assets that will be used for during that next phase of war. And I think Boxer not going to be alone. Tripoli is also there, right? And there are other US amphibious warships also going to be deployed into the region. Whatever they can, they will deploy. Meanwhile, Erdogan, president of Turkey, went after Israel again. Netanyahu and Erdogan, they love to talk shit about each other, right? But as of now, they are only talking. In 5 to 7 years from now, Erdogan probably wouldn't be Turkish leader, but in 5 to 7 years from now, I think Israel and Turkey will be involved in actual military confrontation against each other. But as of now, they are just exchanging some strong words, strong language, and Erdogan were to say that he is rejecting Israeli recognition of Armenian genocide by Turkey. In our history, there is no genocide, no massacres, no oppression, no colonialism, Erdogan said, and how stupid this guy is, man. Everything is lie. I mean, you know what I think about Netanyahu and Israel, right? Modern Israel. But just because someone is criticizing atrocities that are committed by Netanyahu, it does not mean that I'm gonna give them a pass. No, man. Erdogan is a disgrace of humanity, of course, right? Scumbag, total scumbag. And when it comes to Turkey, well, I don't know how well you know, dear friends, Turkish history, but they committed atrocities on a scale that, goodness me, man, very few entities ever did, including Armenian genocide. And by the way, when this idiot Erdogan is talking about Turkey never been involved in the colonialism and stuff, why he is, does he forget who he is ethnically? He is a Georgian. Erdogan is ethnic Georgian. And ethnic Georgians, to nowadays, millions of them, more than in Georgia itself, by the way. Georgia is a former Soviet republic, I was born in Georgia during the Soviet era, in Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic, and I'm a Georgian Ossetian, right? Ethnically, I'm Ossetian. I have some Georgian too, obviously, and I'm a Georgian Ossetian because I grew up in Georgia, and in Georgian culture, my first language is Georgian, so of course I'm Georgian too. And so, in these northern eastern parts of Turkey, by the way, modern day Turkey, in area of Trabzon, right, from Samsun basically to from Samsun and Trabzon to border with Georgia, millions of Georgians, ethnic Georgians, are living to nowadays, millions, more than in Georgia itself. And even though many of them know that they are ethnically Georgians, very few of them speak Georgian, and almost none of them are Christians. And first religion, first and always main religion in Georgia, in Georgian kingdoms, was a Christianity. After, since the 4th century, by the way, it was 337 year when Georgia became Christian, right? Only Armenia became Christian like few years earlier. Armenia became Christian in 334, right? If I remember correctly. So you tell me, dear friends, if Turkey was not involved in colonization, then why these territories are Turkey? Why these territories are not Georgia? Because for thousands of years, Georgians are living here, right? So how come that this territory is Turkey now? How come that Constantinople, by the way, is called Istanbul? What's going on there, right? It's Constantinople, right? Capital of Eastern Roman Empire or Byzantium. It's called Istanbul now, not Constantinople. Nothing to be said about genocide of Greek people and Armenian people and Assyrian people. They were killing everybody, right? Most casualties was among Greek community and Armenian community, Greek, Armenian, and Assyrian community. They suffered the most, but Turks were killing everybody, right? And Erdogan to say that Turkey never committed no genocide, never colonized, never did this and that. I mean, how despicable one have to be to say something like that? Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. I personally think Turkey is a historical mistake and should never exist. And hopefully one day will cease to exist. If I hate any country, by the way, I hate Turkey, honestly. If I hate any country, I don't really hate any country or anyone. Hate is a very strong emotion, and I cannot waste this emotion on nothing. But if I dislike any country, truly dislike any one country, will be Turkey, man. Because I think creation of Turkey was unbelievable tragedy for dozens of nations, by the way, for dozens of nations, and creation of Turkey led to death of millions and millions and millions and millions of people, right? So I dislike this country, man. I'm not talking about people, you know. Majority of Turks are, you know, Indo-Europeans, right? They are not even actual Turks, because original Turkic-speaking people, they were Mongoloids, right? And in modern Turkey, you will struggle to find that many Mongoloids, actually. These are assimilated Indo-Europeans, including President of Turkey himself, who is a freaking Georgian, man. He's not Turkish. So creation of this entity, by the way, is such a tragedy for humanity. I will say that, I mean, to say something like Turkey never committed genocide, never massacred people, never oppressed people, or never colonized people, I mean, come on, man. How can anyone say something like this? Meanwhile, there is another clown out there, by the way, a U.S. ambassador to Israel, right? U.S. ambassador to Israel, Huckabee. And this idiot, man, this idiot makes worst possible statements after worst possible statements, right? I don't know what the hell is wrong with this guy, but he should not be in public eyes, man, because he's a freaking disgrace for America, 100%. And now there are reports that among many other stupid things that he says, he went to say that if there had never been Jewish people, there would never have been America. And this is a U.S. ambassador to Israel is saying. He's a public figure, by the way, official. America owns its roots to the children of Abraham. Goodness me, man. What the hell is he talking about? What this idiot is talking about, man? Honestly. What is wrong with this Christian Zionists, man? Right? US owns nothing to Israel, and US owns nothing to nobody, really, with the exception of countries which US destroyed. US owns to those countries that they destroyed, right? And to people of those countries. But last time I checked, US was always extremely supportive of Israel, so they own nothing to them, right? He also went to say that, well, US is like 250-year-old, and Israel, in Israel, you've been around for 300 and 800 years, 2,800 years, which is also a lie, historically inaccurate statement. There was no freaking Israel existed for 3,800 years. Just because sometime, somewhere, for a short period of time, something was existing, it does not mean that it was always like that. No, man, it was not always like that, right? Freaking idiot, man. Someone have to remove this nobody from position of ambassador and put someone normal, right? Who will not embarrass US every time he says something or opens his freaking mouth. US owns Israel, its existence. Are you freaking idiot? What are you talking about, man? And because of this craziness of American elites, by the way, no wonder many US citizens are confused, very confused, right? And I saw on RT this quite interesting report that most of Democrats take no pride in being American. Only 27% say they are proud to be American. Meanwhile, 93% of Republicans are extremely or very proud. And I wonder what these 93% of Republicans will say when their ambassador in Israel says that America owns something to Israel and there would be no US, right, without Israelis. What the hell are you talking about? What's going on, man? Last time I checked, US was a place where like many people were trying to run from Europe mostly, right? Especially from Germany, by the way. Even though English is official language, even about like 50, 70 years ago, this changed in the last 100 years strongly, right? But even 100 years ago, Germans were majority. Ethnically Germans were majority in US. Now I don't know how many Germans are there. But yes, 100 years ago, even less than that, Germans were majority. Not Brits, by the way, not Irish, but Germans. And people were running away from their own countries looking for a better life, right? Better opportunities. And if US owns anything to anybody, if you necessarily want to go towards these routes, then say thanks to those first migrants, right? That created the US, created the foundation, let me say, on which these so-called founding fathers then created the US, right? But to go out there and say that, oh, we own you, Israelis, because without you, we would not exist. What are you talking about? Freaking idiot, man. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, right? But anyways, a few more news, dear friends, a few more news. There is updates that are regularly coming from Venezuela about casualties as a result of recent massive earthquake. And unfortunately, latest data that I see on the internet is that more than 1,900 people have been killed, more than 10,000 people have been wounded, more than 6,000 people have been rescued from the ruins, and more than 40,000 people are still missing. So unfortunately, there is a high risk that number of casualties will continue to rise next days and potentially weeks before all the rubble is cleared from everywhere. Also, dear friends, yesterday I reported about the trouble that Volkswagen, German car manufacturing giant, is facing. They are about to cut 100,000 jobs, shut down at least 4 plants in Germany, and all sorts of stuff, right, is happening there. And their main reason is that they cannot compete. They cannot compete, especially with the Chinese, and they cannot compete because cost production is extremely high due to extremely high energy costs and extremely high cost of everything else that they used to buy from Russia and no longer can, at least firsthand. And whenever they buy to second or third hand, it's becoming too freaking expensive anyways, right? And also they lost Russian market. They lost Russian market, which is also billions in losses, right? On year terms, that is. And so on this topic of decline of European economy and German economy in particular, well, we have updated that in the first half of this year alone, gas prices, for example, rise 11% in Europe. That's quite a big jump, isn't it? That's quite a high level of inflation. When prices are increasing on 11% on gas, and when energy prices go up, everything else go up, right? And no wonder industries are suffering and shutting down and going bankrupt and are in a sad place. And you would think European elites would try to assist their own economies, right? Because it's about people, man. It's about ordinary people that are losing the jobs. But point is that European elites don't care and never did care about ordinary people, about their fellow citizens, right? Never. And yet another confirmation of that is coming from Anna-Kaisa Itkonen, who is a representative of the European Commission, and who stated that the European Commission rules out any possibility that EU will return to Russian gas and continues preparations for a complete ban on Russian oil purchases also. That's the response from EU bureaucracy on the troubles that people of Europe, working class of Europe, and European companies are facing, big and small, right? That's their reaction. But they don't care. They don't care. You go bankrupt, you go bankrupt. You're going to lay off tens of thousands of people, you lay off tens of thousands of people. They don't care, man. And they are very public about it and very open about it. I don't know what else has to happen for European people, man, to wake up and do something about this craziness, man. I don't know. It's crazy. And while European leadership, let me say, is destroying настоящее будущее, как это по-английски? While the European ruling class is destroying today and tomorrow of their own fellow countrymen and their European economies and social fabric and everything else, there are some other countries that are love to cooperate with Russia and love to do some business with Russia. And India is, of course, one of those countries. And in June alone, oil imports hit record when it comes to India, and over half of this 4.93 million barrels per day oil imports is on Russia. More than half of these daily imports of 4.93 million barrels is from Russia. So India is benefiting because they need energy, and Russia is benefiting because we have a lot of this energy and we have to do something about it, right? We have to sell it somewhere. And India is more than welcome to buy this energy. And if your European ruling class did not destroy all the bridges that Europe was connecting with Russia, well, Russia would be happy to sell this energy to Europe too, and every energy and everything else, man. Right? Russian leadership was all about doing business. But no, man, Western elites had to destroy everything, right? Everything. And they did. And now these giants that made the history of in their fields, right? History. Of course, German car manufacturers are, legendary companies alongside few others, right? UK still has quite a few more or less okay companies. Used to have more, but now, very few, and all of them probably are owned by German companies. And Italy, of course. Italy is also not better with the cars, not just supercars, but Fiat is a people's car, right? As Volkswagen is, by the way, actually. And Alfa Romeo is also not bad, right? Um, of course, Ferrari, Bugatti, and Lamborghini. That's not for everybody, of course. Only for rich and ultra rich. But Fiat and Alfa Romeo, not bad cars, really. In UK, used to be Jaguar, isn't it? I like the Jaguar, by the way, but they destroyed the company. I don't even know what modern day Jaguar is. Um, Aston Martin, cool cars. They do. Later, um, never a fan of Mini Cooper, but funny cars really. Also, never a fan of Rolls Royce and Bentley. Although if you are into luxury cars, you're gonna like those. Uh, Lotus Elise, also classic at this point, I would say. Probably best car Lotus ever produced, or most popular car maybe, or most known car. I don't know, somewhere there. I don't even know if they still produce cars, man, or they went bankrupt. But they're all struggling. That's the point. They're all struggling. When it comes to cars, France, Spain has a Seat, isn't it? Also a people's car, by the way. And France has a Citroën, Peugeot, Renault, right? All of them are people's cars, basically. And all of them are struggling. And all of them are struggling. There are layoffs all over the Europe, right? And all because of those idiots that are in charge of European Union and EU member states. It is what it is, man. And well, I will end new segment, dear friends, on this report that Russian central bank saw no signs of economic overcooling in Russia. This is response to statements of a head of Sberbank, German Greffer, who kind of criticized central bank and the economical blocker of Russian government for overcooling economy with the high interest rates. And well, central bank decided that they're not gonna let the statements of Gref slide unnoticed, and they say no, you stay in your line, right? We know better. The Bank of Russia has seen no signs of economic overcooling. It would be characterized by the decline in sustainable inflation rates significantly below 4%. Rising unemployment and their decline in real incomes, which is not observed. The key rate discussions summary states some participants in the discussion noted a revival in the consumer demand, increased fiscal momentum, and a slower decline in the labor market tensions. They argued that this could indicate potential increased demand side pressure on prices. Well, I don't know. By the way, I don't know. I think central bank and economical bloc actually went too far in their attempt to cool down economy. And also with these crazy interest rates, at some point interest rate was like 21%, correct? And that basically killed demand, not completely, but significantly influenced demand, obviously. But also badly influenced their businesses, small and medium businesses, by the way, right? Because they could not take a loan. Loans were so freaking expensive. You either would not get a loan from a bank, or it would be so expensive that you will choose not to get one. And even now, Even now, it is extremely difficult to get a loan. I tried, by the way. I have a perfect credit score, and to manage my finances better, I was thinking to take a loan. I tried a couple of times, man, in a bank where I have a perfect credit score, and bank refused to give me a credit. Even now, it's next to impossible to get loan. And to say that there is no signs of overcooling of economy, I mean, seriously, we're gonna end up in this year. Most definitely, we will end up in a recession. So, therefore, German Greff definitely had the points. Uh, maybe, and by the way, I mean, this recession will correct the things a little bit, I guess, or maybe even significantly. And from next year, I think her economy gonna go continue grow. But this year, based on what I'm observing and based on information from open sources, I think recession is almost but inevitable. Like little slight recession, but still. So yeah, I have to disagree with the central bank, man. They just went too far, man. They went too far with their cooling down economy and overdid it for sure, in my personal opinion. Yet again. Okay, dear friends, that is it for a news segment. That is it for a news segment. And now let me check, dear friends, Boosty, if there was any comment there. No comments on Boosty. Let me check Patreon. Maybe we have a new member during this stream. Come on. No. Unfortunately, one member left the chat. Yeah, man. Okay. But there was a several super chats from Scooby on the Rumble, dear friends. So let me react on this super chat, and that will be it for today's news update. I hope you liked it, dear friends. I hope you liked it. Hopefully, it was informative and interesting. And let me highlight these super chats now, dear friends. So thank you very much, Scooby, for your super chats on Rumble and donations. And Scooby is commenting, McGregor thinks Putin needs to go for the jugular, Kiev or Odessa now while he still has a chance in order to win the war. Otherwise, it will drag on for a long time. Well, I think first and foremost, we should restore the deterrent with the collective West, and then we should liberate everything up to borders with Western Ukraine. Not just Kiev, not just Odessa, but everything up to borders with Western Ukraine. And when it comes to Western Ukraine, well, people have been brainwashed there so much so that even though most of them are Russians, or significant part of them are Russians, and the other part is Polish ethnicity people, they would not receive us as liberators. So therefore, let's leave Western Ukraine to Poland, Hungary, and Romania to deal with, right? But rest of the territory has to be liberated. Kiev, Odessa, Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, everything. Poltava, Kryvyi Rog, Zaporozhye, everything have to be liberated. Chernihiv, Sumy, all of it. We should go all the way and only stop right next to current administrative border of the Western Ukraine. That's what we should do. And first and foremost, we should restore deterrent with the collective West. Otherwise, we might end up in a much larger scale confrontation with the collective West, and the risks of full-out nuclear war will be much higher. We have to restore deterrent until it's not too late, because at some point we will have to restore deterrent anyways, right? But it's all about calculations of the risks. If we restore deterrent, if we went to restore deterrent on a day when this deterrent was ignored by the Western ruling class, of course, risks of all-out war with the West would be much less than it is right now. But if we won't restore deterrent now and proceed with the restraint policies, at some point we will be pushed so much by Western ruling class, but that we will have no option but to go ahead with the attempt to restore deterrent anyways. And then that point, risk of full-out war will be much higher than today's. So, and I agree with McGregor, by the way. I mean, right now we should restore deterrent and launch an offensive, not just sectoral scale, but massive offensives. Scooby also commenting, how is Putin okay with a NATO nation occupying Ukraine when he won't accept Ukraine joining NATO? You're talking about Western Ukraine in that case, or you are talking about control of by NATO of Kiev-controlled territory now? If you mean Western Ukraine, then as I said, in Western Ukraine, significant portion of the people are indoctrinated in a Nazism, Nazi-fascist ideology on such a scale that it will be too much of a headache to deal with them, right? So let the Poles deal with this. Let the Hungarians deal with this. Let the Romanians deal with this, right? We should liberate the rest of the territory. And after all, even though if we go down deep into history, yes, we can argue that modern Western Ukraine was also, and it was part of Russia, obviously, right? Poland itself was a part of Russian Empire, by the way. Let's not forget that. But it does matter what people think there right now on the ground. So it will be too much of a trouble. So let's leave Western Ukraine to those, right? Hungarians, Poles, Romanians, and let's liberate rest. Let's just liberate rest, right? That's what I think. But if you mean that modern Ukraine is captured politically by NATO, by Western ruling class, and Putin is tolerating this, well, yes, he's tolerating this since 2014, right, after the coup d'etat. And how he can tolerate this, I don't know. I just don't. But yeah, it's no, Ukraine is politically captured since 2014, right? Since that bloody coup d'etat that was orchestrated by CIA and MI6, mostly. And also, Scooby is commenting, their genocidal barbarism aside, your argument for using nukes is the same as Israel. They are being attacked after they've been attacked after initiating a war, and if they feel existential threat, they nuke. Well, I don't see comparison with Israel, Scooby, honestly. I don't see comparison because it's Russia that was attacked, right? Let's not forget that this war started not in 2022. This war started in 14, right? And NATO's war against Russia, I mean, this escalation never actually stopped after Cold War ended. And they continue to expand and expand and expand. And I don't give a damn if based on some so-called international norms that were created by Western elites, Russia is to be blamed for launching special military operation. I don't take this nonsense. Scooby, honestly, I just don't buy into this, right? I don't care about some rules-based order that is created by Western elites. I don't care what Western elites think about anything. I don't consider them to be humans at all, right? I think they are filth. So why would I care what they think and what kind of norms they push over the world? I just don't care, right? But what I do care is policies. And since the Soviet Union collapsed, not a single day Western ruling class was acting with good faith in regards to literally any former Soviet republic. They destroyed Soviet Union. They infiltrated and destroyed Soviet Union. They destroyed that I was citizen of. When Soviet Union collapsed, I became citizen of Georgia, former Soviet republic. They destroyed Georgia too, by the way, right? And now life went so in such a way that I'm now in Russia and I'm a Russian citizen, and same West tries to destroy Russia also. So please I don't accept, man. No nonsense about some international norms and international rules and all this Western narrative that Russia somehow broke any norms or the rules while defending itself. I don't take this nonsense, man. I don't care what Western elites think about anything. I have no respect for them. I don't consider them to be human beings, right? I think they are filth, biological rubbish, literally, right? I think they all have to be killed, or literally killed. And that's it, man. I'm not messing around. I'm not playing no games, man. That's how I think. We have to be real if we want to have any future in this freaking universe. I mean humans, right? And when I'm talking about nukes, well, you want Russia to fight 40 plus countries with the conventional weapons, and you want how many Russian citizens you think can die before we will be justified to use nukes? Scooby, based on your commentary, looks like you are for humanity, right? I mean, you are. That's the attitude that I see in your comments, that you are all about humanity, right? All about humans and stuff. So you tell me how many thousands of Russian citizens have to die from the hands of Western ruling class for Russia deployment of nukes to be justified? All of us have to die? 1 million of us, 2 million of us, 5 million of us? How many of us gonna die? Deployment of nukes to be justified. How many babies gonna be killed by NATO member states? Deployment of nukes against them to be justified. How many? Let's not forget, Russia is a target right here. Russia is assaulted by these freaking animals, by the way, that Western elites are. That's how it is, man. And I'm all for deployment of nukes, because if we don't deploy nukes now, we will have to deploy nukes later. And if now we have a chance to avoid full-scale nuclear exchange, we would not have such a chance later. That's what I think. Either we restore the deterrent now by any means, including nukes, by the way, right? Or world is done, man. Or world is finished. So what you prefer? War to die in a full-scale nuclear exchange, or Russia to restore the deterrent with the collective West now, even if that will require deployment of a couple of nukes as a demonstration, let's say? What would you prefer? So that's how it is, by the way, right? That's how I see the things. And yet again, I'm not playing no freaking games, man. I'm not acting and not pretending. I talk as I see, exactly in a way I see it and I read it. So we have. I'm not necessarily. I don't want necessarily to say that there is not even a slightest chance to restore the deterrent with the collective West without nukes. Probably there is a possibilities to restore the deterrent without nukes being used, at least on the first stage. But we have to restore the deterrent, and I don't care if nukes will be used. That's what I'm saying. I don't care, right? I don't take no nonsense that nuclear weapons cannot be used. No, they should be used if necessary. And Russia is under fundamental threat, existential threat that Western ruling class is generating, and we have every right to defend ourselves, our people, by any means, including nuclear weapons. That's it, man. And better Western societies wake up, man, because we've been attacked under their names, right? Because those are Macrons and Merzis and Stammers that are formally authorizing attacks on Russia. They are representing these countries and these nations. So those nations should wake up. But I don't know, man. Will they? I don't think so. I just don't think so. Until our missiles will fly over their heads, by the way, and our bullets, they're not going to freaking wake up, man, because they've been zombified in mass, many of them. That's what I think, Scooby. So there is no comparison between us and the Israelis, man. No. Absolutely not. And so that's how I think. And dear friends, that's about it. That's about it for now. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and attention. I hope you like the new segment, dear friends. I try to make an informative update for you, and in case you liked it, please indicate that, click that like button, leave some commentary in the comment section. Might help to deal with this shadow ban, by the way. Might help to deal with this shadow ban, right? And to reach wider audience. So yeah, if you can that, please do me a favor, like the video, leave some commentary, and have a wonderful day, dear friends. Take care, and see you tomorrow.